because he does this magic trick. He's passing out pizza, and it's all about big balls, and we're all laughing at what's going on in D.C. Yeah, he's passing out pizza to the troops. If there was a slow-moving coup, let me just describe some of the steps, and you tell me if I'm being paranoid. First, create a masked police force. Get people used to looking at that. Normalize snatching people off the street. Get them used to that. Normalize seeing the National Guard and the military on the street. Then start talking about crime in the capital, which is basically, has always been a fairly crime-ridden city. This is our nation's capital where elections are decided. And then because the crime is so bad, have other states start sending their troops, not just the National Guard there in D.C., but now at least 6 other states are sending their troops, which then Trump can then federalize. So you're having many states' troops on the ground there, and now they're under federal control. So you have in the Capitol a sort of permanent police presence. So when an election dispute might come up, just hypothetically, I don't want to be a big pessimist, and I'm going to pretend for the rest of the duration that the Democrats do have a chance of winning, and they might win the next election. I just don't think they're ever going to take power, because this is what's going to happen. Because I think this coup is going to go off a lot smoother than the last one.
So do I. Bill Maher on the slow-moving coup that is in motion in the nation's capital. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sanity Podcast. I'm Dave Briggs, here with Alisyn Camerata and the great Colby Hall, the founding editor of Media. Great to have you guys. Please, everyone, subscribe to the channel and like this video. We need to show that sanity still has a place in this country. But wow, Alisyn, that is a terrifying soundbite from Bill Maher. And he doesn't even mention the gerrymandering effort that the Trump administration has ongoing, which really contributes to what I do believe is a slow-moving coup. Is he too alarmist or spot on?
I think he's spot on. I've been saying this since before Trump took the White House back. It seemed quite clear to me that this has always been his plan. I started to see the seeds planted even after he won. It seemed to me that he was never going to leave voluntarily. He last time lost and didn't want to leave voluntarily. Now he's won this time. And so I don't believe he's going to leave, even though presidents are limited to 2 terms. And I love how Bill Maher frames it in very conversational terms so that we can all see what's happening. The blue cities are becoming militarized. What more do you need to see with your own eyes?
Colby, your thoughts?
Yeah, I sort of agree with all that's been said. I think Bill Maher does a really good job of threading the needle of populism. He knows that he still has a large chunk of his viewers are Trump alarmists, right? And when he does the math and lays it out like the slow-moving sort of coup, the way that he did, it is alarming. It is concerning. Do I think that's actually what's happening? Kind of. I think mostly it's done by Trump to sort of act as a distraction from a bad economy and the Epstein files. But also, you have to be genuinely concerned, if not alarmed, by exactly what's going down. Now, Trump, I don't think he's going to stay for a 3rd term. I think.
Why? What makes you think he wouldn't, Colby?
Because he was on CNBC 2 weeks ago, and he sort of threw out kind of jokingly 3rd time. And I can't remember the anchor. She said, "But are you going to be president in 2028? And, his guard was down. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And it seemed like a genuine guard down moment.
So you're taking him literally. You're taking President Trump literally.
Let me finish. I think in that rare moment, he was like, no, look, I think his goal in this term was to execute his vision or Stephen Miller's vision and mostly monetize the hell out of his 2nd term. And he's had his minions, Trump family members, try to make dollars, make bank. And he's made what the New Yorker reported $3.4 billion in the last 6 months since he's been elected, which I think is true. I think Trump isn't that strategic. I think if it's in his lap and come 2028 and, everything's militarized and Bill Maher's dystopian future comes true, he's easily, willing to change his mind, right? Like, I don't think this is part of the design, but if it falls into his lap, he's like, okay, maybe I'll do it. So what I'm trying to say is that we should be alarmed. I don't think that, I don't think it's nearly plotted out this way. Maybe I'm naive. I probably am, but I think he's mostly just trying to scare the bejesus out of thinking sane people like us.
I don't want to call you naive, and I am certainly not an alarmist. I rarely ever fall for these types of things. I 100% believe that this is what the president will attempt to pull off. He is essentially stress testing every part of the checks and balances which do not exist. He is stress testing every weakness in the federal government, and he's never been proven wrong. He's never been burned by putting his finger on the stove. And remember, there's no Mike Pence anymore. And I know some people don't like Mike Pence on the left. Mike Pence is a fucking hero at this point, and he is long gone. And JD Vance bears no resemblance to Mike Pence. He has his head so far up the MAGA ass. Forget about the guy that once criticized Donald Trump as a bad candidate and an even worse person. JD Vance, his morals, his core, it's gone. And I don't think there's anyone in the Republican Party today, Alisyn, that will actually stop the president from doing this. And I'm sure you remember when Trump sat in the Oval Office just recently, this most recent time with Zelensky, and his eyes perked up and he shot right up when Zelensky talked about suspending elections because of an ongoing war. He made a comment about it. And I all along have believed that this is the plan, cause some sort of emergency. Hell, it might be a war, and stay in place. And in your estimation, is there anyone on the right that will stop him?
Well, no. I mean, I think they've proven that they're sycophantic and that they don't stand up to him. There are no guardrails anymore. It's been astonishing and really shocking to see how few, our democracy was founded on basically honorable people with integrity keeping up the rules of democracy, and how quickly they can crumble when somebody who wants to make billions of dollars in office and wants to do, things that are not legal, how quickly they can crumble around him, and particularly when he has Congress and when the Supreme Court seems inclined to go along with him. I don't believe that we're going to have free and fair elections in the midterms. I think that the gerrymandering is just the first start to that. But I also think that, as we've talked about, the National Guard rolling out in different blue cities is another part of this. And I agree with you, Colby, that President Trump has never been a strategic thinker, but the people around him are. And
No, I think that's a fair point. And you said a great point there, Alisyn, that sort of the framers of the Constitution had this genius model that was iterative, like that we're going to be able to change it so to sort of account for threats that we can't predict, right? But what they didn't predict is they just assumed everyone that was going to be in office would abide by sort of mutual respect, accepted standards, decorum, that sort of is part of our social fabric. And what you have in Trump is a guy that is kind of a nihilist, kind of a guy that is kill or be killed, and he'll do whatever he can to monetize, get wealth, gain power, and if it means stay in office, he'll do that. You're right, there's been no guardrail so far. I wonder, in the absence of our former vice president, will there be a Howard Baker that comes up in this next one? And so far, it's been 10 years for everyone looking for, like, when's Mitch McConnell going to show up? When is someone on the Republican Party going to stand up to this guy? Nary once has anyone done that, except for Vice President, Mike Pence, right? So, it is concerning. I also feel that Bill Maher is, he's a master at that. So he paints the dystopian picture because, we should be well aware of it. And he's good at that. But it's almost like a populist move. And he's the same guy that will sit around and praise Trump a second later.
I know they deserve their fair amount of criticism. I do believe the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, whoever you want to name check, will step up and say, no, this is a bridge too far. But ultimately, as we've talked about with people like Ellie Honig here, there is no enforcement behind a Supreme Court decision. They don't have a police force, so they can issue a ruling, and it's not entirely clear President Trump would listen to that, nor Congress would uphold it. But here's my issue with Bill Maher. And this is why the left was so pissed when he normalized Donald Trump with that dinner, because Bill Maher was schnookered. He was fooled. He was bamboozled. And here is what Maher said about having dinner with President Trump, for those that don't remember.
A crazy person doesn't live in the White House. A person who plays a crazy person on TV a lot lives there, which I know is fucked up. It's just not as fucked up as I thought it was.
Okay, he could not have botched that. He actually flipped it. How was he so fooled by Trump that he was just, sprinkling some Trump dust on him?
Well, I mean, I think I can speak to this a little bit because I've had Trump dust sprinkled on me. Somehow it sounds
Weird.
Ew.
I've had a couple of meals one-on-one with Donald Trump when I worked at Fox and at CNN, actually. He likes one-on-one meetings, as you know. And he was charming. I mean, that's, it's hard for me to even use that word because the person that I see now at his rallies is so familiar to the person that I saw one-on-one. So I understand the dazzling. I understand that he can lock in, he can be focused. When you hear him at rallies and he's just spouting nonsense and he's a Mr. Non Sequitur and he isn't making any sense and he seems like he's truly lost his mental faculties. I mean, that's what I hear when I hear him at rallies talking about shower pressure and whatever. He segued to something else. One-on-one. Now, this was years ago, okay, mind you. So maybe things have changed in terms of his mental faculties since then. But one-on-one, he locks in. He looks you in the eye. You're the only person in the room. He can be charming. He has charisma. So I guess he turned that on for Bill Maher, and I understand why Bill Maher would think that's a sane person. But when you hear him out in public, and as well as some of the decisions he's made, you can't swear that that is not a sane person. So I think that Bill Maher was, as you say, snookered.
Yeah,
I think that you're onto something there. I think there's very much two personas of Trump. I had drinks recently with a member of the White House press corps, who's an on-air talent at another network, and he said I was riding back on Air Force One, and he invited me and another guy up to his cabin so we could watch an NFL playoff game, and we totally broed out. And he was a different guy. We had a drink. And we were just talking football, which is such a different sort of experience from the rally. And, if I were to say this to sort of my biggest anti-Trump friends here in Brownstone, Brooklyn, they would no, he's not like that. It's yeah. And to your point also, he spends most of his energy calling the media, calling reporters, calling anchors, kind of gaming the refs because he knows, very often it's mostly Fox News people, but it's not just Fox News people, right? It's people across, because he wants, how it is. It's access, but it's also, oh, right, you're not as crazy as you are in public. But then when he gets up on a rally or he becomes like this sort of, Vince McMahon, WWE kayfabe product that just says insane, crazy trash talk. And it gets the media to react. He drives the narrative. So I think there's two sides to this. Last thing about Bill Maher. Bill Maher's a lot like Trump. He's a populist, right? So he knows that Trump has been normalized and he got access. So suddenly, guess what Bill Maher is doing? He will say the alarmist thing off one side of his mouth, but then he'll turn around and sort of defend him and his dinner at the same, which is hey, those two things they seem to be in conflict, and yet he pulls it off.
Yeah, and look, the charismatic, charming guy doesn't fucking matter at all. It doesn't matter one bit, and that's what Bill Maher seemed to miss in that moment. It is totally inconsequential, but I think it's also a reflection of, look, I'm here in Colorado. You were just in Kansas over the weekend, Colby, and it's different in the Northeast. Everyone's panicked about this. Out here, nobody knows what's going on. They've got their earmuffs on. They're not at all watching the news anymore. They don't even understand stuff like the slow-moving coup. They don't even know how fucked up the gerrymandering is in Texas. I think that is the case, I would say, of 3/4 of the American public. Is that what you sense out there?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that they don't. I mean, they care and they're smart people. I just think that they're not as navel-gazy dialed in about East Coast sort of Beltway, Acela to New York City obsession. And, I think that they've heard enough alarmism like this. It's the sort of boy who cried wolf. It's okay, you guys, the sky is not falling all the time. And also they're when you live in suburban Kansas City and you have a life lifestyle, you're none of this really applies to me. And
Yet.
it's maybe blissfully ignorant. It's a choice, but so far their lives haven't really changed. And I don't think that they see democratic freedoms really changing, right? Like maybe we're just on the precipice. Maybe they are sort of like not as curious as they should be. But, I was struck by the fact that like, oh, wow, all of my friends in Brownstone, Brooklyn and in the political media world, we think about this nonstop and they're aware of it, but they're mostly concerned about going to their kids' flag football games or, a round of golf or, their grandma that's sick. I was struck, and it was a good focus group for me, and it's people that I love very dearly and I respect a ton, but it's very different from the people that I interact with day in, day out, either media at work, you guys, or even my friends here in the mean streets of Cobble Hill, Brooklyn.
I really appreciate you guys bringing those communiques from the Midwest, because I do think that we can obviously all be in our own geographic bubble. However, the frog boils slowly.
Right.
Yes, I understand that people don't see and feel it yet because it hasn't come directly to them. Let me ask you guys this. Do you think that your friends and family in other places other than a coast would be upset if the midterms were, I don't know, canceled because crime's too high in some cities, or because we've gone to war, or because it's gerrymandered to the point of lack of recognition? I mean, would that get their attention? What would get their attention, I guess?
I would separate those. If the elections were canceled, yes, I think that would finally sound the alarm bells. But when I tried talking just last night about the Texas gerrymandering effort, I think I got a minute in before the eyes glazed over. And this shouldn't be complicated. This is literally politicians picking their voters instead of voters picking their politicians. And that's what I said. But it really, that's the beauty of gerrymandering, of redistricting. There needs to be a better goddamn word, because people don't understand the impact of literally picking your voters. And the reason it's such a big deal is Republicans have way more leeway to do this moving forward than Democrats do. They have like 3-to-1 the opportunities before 26 than Democrats. So it's about to get way worse. I don't know if you find the same thing, Colby.
Well,
those things don't resonate.
Well, I was struck by the fact that most people don't obsess over it, and they almost feel like talking politics is not appropriate, right? You don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, and there's still this very old school like, why do we want to bring up something that we could potentially disagree with? It's a very sort of like old school, like from the 50s or 60s models. But when we did, like I brought up gerrymandering, or it came up, and the overriding concern is like, yeah, it's not great, I don't like it, but everyone's done it. And so Trump's doing it more. And now Gavin Newsom's doing it more. So there is this sort of both sidesism as well. To your question, though, Alisyn, I do think if it got so far as to elections were canceled, there'd be a small sect to be like, well, I believe what Trump is saying. But to a person, for the most part, all of my friends who largely voted Republican, they all sort of hate Trump as a person. They think he's a terrible person, but they're tribal. They believe in what once used to be more Republican principles like free market, small government. The Trump second administration now owns 10% of Intel, which is arguably socialism. So, they hate him as a person, but they voted for him on principles. And they even were saying like, why are we owning part of Intel? Like the federal government owns 10% of Intel. Like that was a thing that they were like, that's not who we are supposed to be as a country. So that as business, these are all business dudes who are worth a lot of money. That struck them. I think if there were elections canceled, they would find that, almost all of them would say like, that's too far. That's crazy.
But would they take to the streets though? I don't think so.
No, they're not. They're not going to skip their Chiefs game on Monday Night Football. Yeah. That's a priority.
Yeah. And look, we're about to own 50% of TikTok. That is my prediction. So, and it is socialism. It is nothing short of socialism. So another thing that I don't think would resonate out here was this whole catastrophe over the MSNBC rebrand, which I want to get your guys' reaction to this. I myself did pay attention to it, but didn't necessarily understand it. Here's Megyn Kelly. I think.
Megyn refused to speak to us. She's afraid. She's hiding under her desk, the way that Bill O'Reilly used to say.
Sorry, guys. All right. Well, Megyn Kelly, it
sounds like they've caught a terrible disease, like right now. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, diagnosis they've received. That's awful. Doesn't sound like the call letters for a cable news channel. At best, it sounds like maybe like they're in menopause now. I don't know, like PMS or like some sort of lady condition that they have, and it's happening right now. You need to tune in to see what Rachel Maddow's going through. I don't know how they settled on those terrible initials. Or like, is it some feminist mantra like Ms. MS, period. Now it's all about the ladies. This is our moment. However you slice it, it's a disaster. And they still haven't solved the basic problem that they have more letters in their call name than they do viewers. And the rebrand is not going to help.
What the hell happened to her,
multiple
Alisyn?
sclerosis shaming there? What I don't understand. Like there is a disease called MS, and she doesn't like that. It also MSNBC started with the initials MS. I don't know. I'm confused by her take.
Are you confused by her and what has happened to her and her journalistic integrity? I mean, there wasn't a lot, but there was some.
Me?
Either one of you.
Take it, Colby.
I'm surprised that she came out aggressively against anything MSNBC related. That's not like her at all. No, she's, I wrote a column that said that she's the new Rush Limbaugh. Because she is a very effective outrage merchant. She crosses the line. She sort of she's an intentional mean girl. And I don't mean to gender that personality, so forgive me, any real mean girls out there. And it works. I mean, that says more about kind of the political media ecosystem that we're in right now. And, I think she's flat out wrong. To get to the MSNBC thing, like, I think given the cards that they were played, that was a pretty elegant solution. I wrote a column about that, given that they're known as MS. Do they come up with a new name like Tronk or Quibi? Like, that backfires. That Megyn Kelly knew, like, she was a bit of a moderate. She was sort of a litigator on Fox News. She was a center-right person, and now she is campaigning for Trump because she knows that's where the eyeballs are. And is she principled? I would argue not, but it's lucrative to curry anger and outrage, and I think that's precisely what she's trying to do.
Usually I think she has the ability, though, to put her, finger on the pulse of America. And this one, I just didn't fucking get it at all. I just didn't understand the outrage one bit myself. I don't watch a lot of MSNBC, but do you think America cares about the call letters of a cable news station?
They don't.
No.
But I mean, you think that Megyn Kelly herself has some outrage and bitterness towards NBC?
Well, you know what? I hadn't thought about that.
Huh. Insightful.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. You may have nailed it there. I just found it and it was almost the same way Donald Trump once attacked her with like childish, sexist sort of weird language that I guess I expect better from an attorney.
Well, let me just say what's really quick. There is this weird phenomenon when any institution does anything new, the first and laziest reaction is, "Oh, it's bad. We hate it." And it's just so lazy and dumb. And is it ideal? No, but it's the hand that they were dealt with, and they kept their call letters MS, and people refer to them as MS. And I guarantee you the executives at MSNBC, if they know that they're earning the ridicule of Megyn Kelly, they probably are thinking, yeah, we got this one right? So it's a weird thing. Something new, we don't like it.
Yeah,
I do think it'll be curious how MS now rebuilds an audience. Do they stay in this left lane? Do they try to play both sides of the aisle? Is there enough of an audience tuning in to straight liberal news? I'm not sure. The numbers right now reflect no. And the people you talk to, I mean, I talked to Sharon Waxman on this podcast last week, a lifetime MSNBC viewer that said following the election and still today, she couldn't watch because she felt she was lied to. She felt they were telling you what they wanted to be true, even though it clearly was not on its face. So I don't know what the future is for that audience, Alisyn.
I think that's interesting, Dave. If people feel betrayed, that's one thing and they might turn away. But people generally are pretty passionate and possessive about their love of MSNBC or their love of whatever cable channel. They identify it. It's tribal, as Colby had alluded to earlier. So I think that people have turned away because the news can be so upsetting and crazy making. Enter sanity. And so that's why I think people have tuned out. But I think that people are still very devoted to the personalities on MS, as we call it. So I don't think the rebrand will hurt them. Personally, yeah. Colby?
I think you're right. I mean, my metaphor is always that like politics is a little bit like sports. And if you're an avid sports fan of a certain team and they're going to the Super Bowl and you're really like, they're going to win, and then they lose in a rout, guess what? You don't watch the post game of the Super Bowl that your team just got blown out by. You turn off the TV and you stop caring about that sport and that team for a time for you to like process and heal. I think MSNBC is going through a bit of it's more than just the rebrand. I think they've realized, I mean, they had a Joe Biden problem, frankly. Like they didn't talk about the problems with Joe Biden. When Jake and Alex were putting out that book, Original Sin, they barely covered that because it painted themselves in a really sort of poor light. And to Sharon Waxman's point, like, if you're not getting the full story, then it's not a news place. It's an opinion place that's there to make you feel good. And I think Rebecca Cutler, who's now taking over, she's really charged to try to bring back some sort of newsier, more dispassionate or centrist point of view. I don't know if they can pull that off. I don't think it's going away anywhere. And I'm also a big believer in the pendulum metaphor. You know, it's always darkest before dawn, and it's pretty dark right now, but it's too soon to call them dead right now. I think they'll come back.
What will be interesting about the rebrand of the shift is they no longer have the resources of NBC News. And the one thing I think that did for them, that not only gave them resources, it gave them balance. Because traditionally, whether you want to believe this or not, I do know this to be a fact. Most of the NBC News reporters that came on NBCC were strictly giving facts and context and news, and then it was being spun by the MSNBC personalities. So once you take that away, I would be a little concerned that they would go even further to the left. But speaking of rebrands that went really, really poorly, the Cracker Barrel rebrand was an abject disaster, and it continues today.
I think the deep-seated reaction where it's so negative against the logo change, it really boils down to something much deeper than just Cracker Barrel's logo. It's that the American people are sick of having our culture and heritage stripped from us, right? All these things that are nostalgic, Americana, are constantly being stomped on, and we're being told that there's something wrong with it, that we should be ashamed of it in some way, that it needs to be replaced with something more inclusive or, you know, more driven by these DEI characteristics. And I think people are just sick of it.
Okay, that's Robbie Starbuck, who's frankly become one of the most influential people in corporate America today by destroying some of these DEI initiatives. And some of these companies deserve it. I mean, quite frankly, I think Bud Light deserved what happened to them. But Robbie has become very powerful in pushing this anti-DEI, anti-woke message. This one, I don't fucking understand one bit. Like, I, unlike Robbie, have been to Cracker Barrel many times. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was 2 minutes away from my studio, and I love chicken fried steak. I don't understand one bit of the woke, the rebrand that this is woke, Colby, and MAGA went nuts with this story. Do you get it? Help me. What am I missing?
Well, I kind of checked out on this one because it seemed like a dumb outrage thing. I didn't get it either. But now that I watched that clip, it makes perfect sense. Of course, this rebrand is all about woke DEI culture. Like, I'm joking. I don't get it at all. What it says to me is that any change, anything that's different is going to go through this anger outrage filter. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's like, oh, they changed something that's kind of this iconic middle American sort of roadside food place. Well, that's evidence, of course, of like somehow stomping on heritage culture. Like, it's not a fast food place, but it's like a cheesy Midwestern Southern sort of restaurant that's fine. It's good. It's not great. It's like an upgrade on Waffle House, just barely. But like, just because they changed their logo doesn't mean that, like, how it connects to the DEI culture. I mean, it's bizarre. It's just,
help us, Alisyn. You must understand.
Let me explain something. I mean, not that I can. I am shocked to learn that people are so attached to that old Cracker Barrel logo. So as you know, their value dropped to something like $100 million overnight.
150 million. Yeah.
Okay, $150 million. Their stock value plummeted right after they changed this logo. Again, I didn't know people had such affection for this. I personally, not knowing the backstory of Uncle Herschel, who is the character who is depicted on the logo, I thought, oh, that's just kind of an old-timey logo. They're just modernizing it. They're making it cleaner. It's just now
That's what I saw.
Oh yeah, me too. But you could argue it's too generic. It's just Cracker Barrel. Maybe they could have kept the barrel. So maybe it's just a crappy logo. But I didn't know. I'm confused by the racial overtones. If that's what Starbucks is
Culture and heritage. I mean,
I will tell you this: the one good thing from Cracker Barrel execs is that they got so much earned media over this. Like, it's not all positive, but I don't recall a time where the company Cracker Barrel has been a bigger place in the national zeitgeist. Like, we're all talking about Cracker Barrel.
But people are avoiding Cracker Barrel. That's why it dropped, right? That's why their profits dropped.
Thank you. Just to give context here, because context is missing from every conversation today, and that's part of what Sanity is hoping to accomplish. As someone who has been to Cracker Barrel many times, 90% of the people jumping out of the story have never even seen a Cracker Barrel, let alone walked into it and sat down and ate the food. And that pisses me off. But number two, this stock is down almost 70% since 2021. It's because we don't go to places like that anymore. Places like that are struggling. And this is not about culture or heritage. They were trying something to spark interest because it was just a downward slide for the last 4 years and it looked to continue. And look, it may have been a failed rebrand, but this was a brand that looked like it was toast long before they took a barrel out of a logo.
First, they came from a Cracker Barrel logo, and I said nothing. Wait, too soon?
Oh, now you care about democracy's erosion. Okay. All right, Colby.
Don't touch my Cracker Barrel logo.
So nobody can find the rage here. All right. Well, we tried.
Yeah.
We found the sanity. We did not find the outrage over Cracker Barrel.
But you know what? Feel free
MS
to comment.
Now.
If we need to be educated, which I'm sure on some level we do, let us know in the comments because I do want to know why people are so up in arms about old Uncle Herschel.
I'm willing to get angry. Just tell me why I need to be angry, and I'm right there.
And if you've been to Cracker Barrel, for God's sake. All right, thanks for joining us, Colby Hall. We appreciate it, everybody. Please subscribe to Sanity and like this video and tell your friends. Thank you, guys.